Hi, this is Jed Wonderly with the Utah Sports Report, and I've got a special guest on the show today. We're going to talk all about recruiting. We're going to talk about lots of stuff Utah, but mostly football recruiting. And I've got Alex Markham with Ute Nation from Rivals, and he's got all the inside info. I've got a little bit of it because I'm a member of the site, but we're going to see if we can't pull a few teeth and get a little more information. So we're going to be back right after this, so stay tuned and get all the good stuff for next year, baby. Let's go.
And they'll run it, Jordan. Ty Jordan. See you later. Touchdown, Utah.
4 seconds, 3 seconds. Back to Van Dyke, deep three up. And good! It's good!
They just need this to finish their best beam rotation of the year. And look at Ford, says get on your feet.
Alrighty, we are back on the Utah Sports Report with Alex Markham, and we're going to start talking about lots of great recruits that we signed, mostly in the early signing period, but we got picked up another one in the late signing period, and I think we already had a good returning team for next year.
Yeah, we do, yep.
And a few holes that we need to fill, maybe, plug in some depth people for next year. But Alex, who's your favorite person? First of all, give me your idea of your overall thoughts on the signing class, and then give me maybe your top 3 people in the class and tell me why.
Yeah, so overall thoughts on the signing class. I mean, look, Utah, by now everybody knows everybody knows what to expect from Utah signing classes, right? They're not going to get your 5 stars. They're going to get a few 4 stars. They're going to get a lot of the high 3s that really turn and develop, right? In other cases you get somebody like Devin Lloyd who's a lower 3-star, and look what he's doing now,
Britton Covey.
Yeah, Britton I think
2-star.
Yeah, Britton was a 2-star,
Weddle, 2-star.
But exactly, go Rams,
and
right?
he's in the Super Bowl this weekend, so go Rams, baby.
There you go. Next weekend.
Yeah, next weekend. Pro Bowl this week.
I wish it was this week, and everybody keeps asking me it's this weekend. I'm like,
right.
Pro Bowl. They're like, oh, so we got to deal with the one boring game,
right,
and then get to the good one, right? But
is it a game actually? I don't think so.
It's not anymore, man. It's a sideshow. Right. But no, with this overall recruiting class, Utah set up solid foundationally right now. They got a lot of young guys returning in key roles, right? Not even just starters, but in the 2 deep, So it was really in this one, just trying to target and strengthen the areas that they felt like needed to be strengthened. And for the most part, I feel like it was done. The safety, I felt like they did well right there with Malaska and Sione Vahi returning from his mission. Vahi's going to be somebody that kind of slides under the radar, right? But they are extremely high on him. Love his athleticism. He can play both safety spots. So if he can slot in, depending on what's going on with R.J. Hubert and his injury, if he can slot in and at minimum provide that instant depth or starters minutes, I mean that's a huge plus for this defense. Especially losing Vontae.
Alex, so real quick, while we're talking about safety, Vontae's a key figure to replace. Who do you think, either on the roster or coming in, is gonna step up at free safety?
That's a good question, because you can always slide the guys around, right? But then you got to take a look at it too, where there's experimenting that goes on in spring ball. And a lot of times it's cornerback shifting over to safety or safety shifting over to cornerback. Well, you got all those guys that had the season-ending injuries at cornerback, and so which ones are actually going to be able to be ready or which ones are going to be limited? You're not really afforded that opportunity to be able to sit back and find that out right now, right? Like somebody like, for instance, Samaya Vaughan, he started off at safety. They move him over to cornerback, and when I first found out they were testing him out at cornerback. I asked the guys about it, and they said, no, absolutely. This is a permanent switch. We love Samaya.
He played great for a freshman.
Oh,
and a safety to a cornerback switch too.
and here's the other thing, Kay. You talk about recruiting, which I'll cut back into that other stuff since you were asking me about the safety, so I'll cut back into that in a minute. But with Samaya Vaughan, I mean, he was a quarterback in high school. He had an offer. I can't remember.
So was Weddle.
I can't. What did Weddle not play in high school, right? but no. So Samaya Vaughan, I mean, he was a quarterback in high school. He had one offer, a low-level offer. He was committed to him. He was going to be signing, and then I want to say it was the night before signing day. He flipped and took the preferred walk-on offer with Utah.
Gotta love Utah's
already got a
status.
scholarship.
Right. He earned that pretty quick. But you gotta love Utah's status when he takes a preferred walk-on offer from us versus whoever he was going to sign with. The other thing that tells me about Samaya is that he's got confidence in himself that he's going to step up, and he did.
Exactly. It was Morgan Scally find. When Morgan tells you that you're a good athlete, he can see you at another position, and he can do great things with you. You listen to him, and Samaya did, and right now it's paying off. Let's just hope that his injury, he comes back from it all right, because, man, I'm telling you, had he not gotten hurt in the towards the end of that Pac-12 championship game, number one, they shut out Oregon, and
right.
two, so they don't get the touchdown there, and then two, who knows how much different of a ball game it is in that stinking Rose Bowl, you know.
Yeah.
So
probably enough for us to win.
Yeah, exactly. And if they would have stayed aggressive a little bit more, but that was the one.
That's another discussion.
Yeah, exactly. But getting back, so you wanted to ask about the safeties there for a second, but getting back to the additional stuff that you were asking, just on the overview of how I felt with the class, and then maybe three guys. But really, I felt like they really hit all the areas that they needed to hit with plug and play guys, with depth pieces. You look at somebody like Lander Barton that is quite possibly going to step right in, and he's not going to be Devin Lloyd, but everybody compares him to Devin Lloyd.
I'm going to be Devin Lloyd to start with. Who knows where he ends up with? But,
I'm not even going to say he's going to be Devin Lloyd, because I like everybody being their own person.
Right.
And I don't know about anybody else, but it's you can be a competitive person. You can be up for the challenge, but do you want to be compared and held to that stature? Right, you look back in the day where, like, the Jazz were trying to pursue Andre Miller as a free agent right after Stockton retired, right? And Andre, as big of a competitor as he was, he didn't want to follow in Stockton's footsteps.
Right.
And so it's like you want to be careful comparing those guys to those things. That's just a perfect example, right? The one area that I really wish that they could have improved, and hopefully you see it later on in the transfer portal, but that's not going to likely happen now until spring or summer, right? But they did a good job with the wide receiver pieces they added, but there's still a lot of questions there, right? They didn't get the impact guys, but when Cam's guys, Cam was hitting the tight ends all year. It's not. And it wasn't
because he didn't have the impact.
It wasn't a system thing, right? It's like sometimes people will try to blast me on Twitter if I say, the one position Utah needs to improve is wide receiver. I'm sorry, it's the case. It's the flat out case. It was Britton Covey, everybody else, and Devon Vele to an extent.
Yep.
But no, like, what is going on with Utah's wide receivers right now? It's inadequate. You can't blame that on Bumpus. They did make plenty of strides.
Right.
And I do know that everybody around that program and the wide receivers, they love Guy Holiday, but they love the more hands-on approach that they're getting with Bumpus, So
I think you could definitely,
it's going to take time.
I think you could definitely see some improvement in the wide receivers under him. But, he didn't have time to, establish relationships with the people he was recruiting and whatnot to get any awesome recruit in this year. So
Right. You know, and
although we did get one, Mbanasur, or however you say his name.
You know, I'm still not sure how to fully pronounce that name, but now here's the unique thing with him on this, okay, is so I kind of had an inkling that it was going to be Utah. He wasn't rated yet on Rivals. And so I approached the guys and I was like, hey, you know, so how people understand how the ratings go. I don't do it. I can make recommendations. Sometimes it can kind of fall on deaf ears. Other times, you know, they listen to me and even take it a level up, right? And with Sydney, I hit them up and I just said, I was like, hey, this kid needs to be rated. I don't know why he hasn't yet. You got to look at his film. He's a freak, you know. He's not committed to Utah. These are the schools.
Guy is 6'6", runs a 4.5 40, and is 210 pounds. So.
He's the coveted tall, lanky deep threat.
Right.
That Bumpus was looking to add, and so that was a key piece that they added right there, right? And he went from not even being rated to a 3-star at 5.7. You don't see that. You really don't see that. So that puts it into perspective just how highly they thought of this kid, just off the little bit of film that they saw.
And for those that don't know the rating system, 5.7 is 1/10 of a point away from a 4-star, because 5.8 is a 4-star. So that's a highly rated 3-star.
Right, and you know, in the end, you know, they rate him as a tight end just because of his size and everything, which I get, you know. But you know, some schools were looking at him a tight end, some schools were looking at him a wide receiver. But ultimately, he came in, and you know, a lot of this has to do with his talent, but then a lot of it probably in the end had to do with them seeing, oh, well, Utah knows what they're doing with tight ends, right? So he came in as the number 25 tight end, but as a for Rivals in this class, but as of right now, Utah has every plan to use him as a tall, lanky wide receiver on the outside. Additionally, you know, like somebody like Ryan Pepins, love this kid's highlights. Just
very similar to Covey. He'll remind you of Covey.
Yeah, again,
not that you want to compare. I know. Not that
compare.
Come on, I don't think anybody's got the shiftiness.
Come on, Jed. But no,
that's kind of the role.
Yeah, this kid. If you ask me right now, he's at least a year away. Could he make an impact next year? Yes. But it's going to be crucial when he's here to gain weight immediately, because you know you can't expect him to really be out there and even get half the reps that Covey was getting at that size.
Side note with Pepins, he was the I believe it was 7A Player of the Year in Alabama. So the kid can play. Alabama doesn't have bad football. So anyway, go ahead with.
Yeah. No, and the two others, just to touch on them briefly. I've had a lot of people talk to me about Chris Reed, the wide receiver out of Florida. He was kind of a late find and everything. Utah offered him when he had no offers. He commits pretty much immediately, and then you know, other offers start falling in. But what I like to do, and the ones watching this that obviously subscribe to my site or pay attention to my stuff, they'll usually see, like, I have either former players or, like, this year I had former Ute staffer Keegan Anderson doing player evaluations, right? And you know, everybody that saw this kid's film, and I agree as well, believe that this kid is so under the radar that he could turn into the best recruit in this class. But the other one out of those four, you know, and again, so it's like they didn't do a bad job with wide receiver. They got a lot of bodies, but it would have been nice to get somebody where it's like, okay, this guy is a surefire bet. This guy can play next year. We know
plug
this.
and play. Come
plug
in
him
and be an impact.
And oh, by the way, starters, like, up your game because this kid's going to be coming to take your job.
Right.
You know, that's what you want, right? But the other one that is a lot of intrigue to me, he's one of the fastest guys in the Northwest, Teo Johnson. You know, he kind of, you look at his situation, kind of like how Jonah Ellis had, where Jonah was one of the star freshmen of this class, this last class, and he's going to be a freak next year, but nobody knew enough about him. Plenty of us thought, oh, he could be really good. He could be an under-the-radar guy because it's Luther's son, right? But being out in Idaho, the level of competition is just not there. So people just don't know. People don't see. Teo's got the size.
So
Teo's
both
got
of the guys he's talking about
Yes.
are from Idaho.
Yeah, so Teo's got the side. Teo's got the speed. He can play defensive back. He can play wide receiver. Initially, the look is to play him at wide receiver. So we'll see how that goes. But if he can translate and if he can catch up to the speed of the game at the college level, after going from again, Idaho's level of competition isn't what it is in Utah, and Utah's competition to a large extent, unless you're in the trenches, and battling each other out in those high school games, it's not what it is throughout a lot of the other areas of the country, right? So if he can get up to speed fast to the college game, Teo could be somebody really interesting to watch wide receiver wise. So that was the one area that I felt like they could have hopefully done a little bit better on. Again, good job filling up with bodies with potential, right? The top, I would say my favorite three to really watch, definitely, I mentioned Lander, right?
Mm-hmm. I figured you would. I figured Lander would be one of those three.
Lander's a no-brainer, and like the all-star stuff that he did, everybody was just drooling over this kid. And
He's a
there were
freak
people,
athlete, and he's also legacy.
Yeah, and there were actually evaluators wondering if they didn't even rate him high enough, even though he had about a 100-point rate, 100 player rating jump. So he jumped about 100 guys in the end of the Rivals 250, right? So part of that was he wasn't a big media guy. He's always receptive and good to me when I reached out, but yeah, didn't really care about people doing publicity for him with the articles or videos, and wasn't really a camp seeker, and so that's kind of what did it for him. If that wasn't the case, you're probably looking at a 5-star kid, and his brother. Now here's the one thing for him to be able to take and use it as ammunition for going into his Utah career. But on Rivals, Jackson's still the highest rated Barton. Jackson's still that. He had Lander.
And Cody had a great career.
If anybody shows you this, Jackson has you beat by 34 spots, maybe 35 in the Rivals 100, man. So.
My money's on Lander. I mean, that he's going to end up with the best overall career here in Utah, although Cody really ended strong. Yeah. And he's having a good career in the NFL.
Danny's still the best Barton, though.
Yeah,
far and away.
Yeah. Danny's amazing.
You guys
we really got to step up.
The Barton boys are beat, so.
Yes. Actually, the best is the mom, Mickey. Mickey was a 2-sport athlete who was all conference in both sports, so beat that.
Others. I mean, definitely. I mean, the other one I'm going to mention is an obvious one. It's another Rivals 250 kid, right? Jalen Glover.
He's been one of my favorite all along.
Yeah, and I mean he fits the Utah system, okay, and the one thing I will say on this is I like to temper expectations on guys, right? I mean, if he comes in,
mine
next
are really
year,
high. I don't care what he says.
If Jalen comes in next year and all of a sudden he's, if he's like taking carries away from Tavion, right, or if he even slots in at number 2, good for him. That's great, right? And there's a lot of Ute fans that might think that that'll happen, but Ute fans need to also understand and realize Utah's got a loaded running back room, right? The other thing to it too, and I don't say this as a negative at all, because again I'm high on Glover. Like, he does a lot of things just like with his balance and his burst and just his moves in the hole that are tough to teach, or guys don't learn until a couple years into college, right? But Jalen is that somewhere in between Jordan Wilmore and Ty Jordan. Where's that going to be? Or what end of that spectrum can that be? Right? And so it's up to him. He's got the work ethic for it. but where can he take that, right? And so again, he's just got to come in, be humbled for that first year, knowing that he's going to be behind, a guy that could very easily be one of the top
running backs in the draft
next year.
Yep.
Right? Jalen is not going to beat him out, whatever anybody wants to think on that, regardless of how good Jalen is. And I mean, look, he was the Florida Player of the Year, but it's going to be interesting and awesome to see just how Jalen takes to the immediacy of being here and learning from somebody like Tavion, learning from somebody even like Mekhi Bernard, who, I mean, had Mekhi not gotten hurt in the BYU game when he started, and people don't really know that he got dinged up in that game, right? But that was his big breakout game, and he was really starting to separate himself. Tavion was messing up. Who knows how different that running back room would look right now had Mekhi not gotten hurt, because Mekhi's a special back.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other reason why I'm saying, like, Jalen might not even be number 2 next year.
Mekhi's incredible.
Yeah.
And his pass catching ability, I mean, I'd love to see him play at least
receiver.
half the time at slot. So
yeah, that's the other thing right there is I would love to see Jalen come in and dominate at running back to the point where they're like, okay, we have a solid number 2 right here, right? And know that they can take Mekhi and put him over to wide receiver. Still use him kind of in like that Savoy, Warren, and like Brent Castile type role.
Right.
But I mean, you move somebody like him over to wide receiver, and all those issues that we were talking about at wide receiver get minimized a ton.
Right.
Because in no offense to the other guys, like, I can see him immediately going over there and being that big game breaker that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So again,
he's fast, he's strong, and he's got great hands. And if you don't know how good of his hands that Mekhi has, I'm gonna roll a highlight from the Rose Bowl, and you'll see.
I'm gonna have to. I'll send you over that picture that my photographer Troy Coltman took. Oh my gosh, it's the best angle of that catch, of the touchdown catch in the Rose Bowl. It's a special one, but yeah.
Might pop that on too.
Oh, there you go. I'll send it for sure. Let's see another one. Let's see. Who would be another good one to highlight for the top 3?
What do you think about either of the quarterbacks? We've got a good dual threat with Nate.
See, and Nate would be one that I would mention in the top 3. But again, at the same time too, with him, he's got a minute. He's got to learn under Cam. Can he be more patient than Costelli? Which, I'll be honest with this, Costelli might have been 4th string, might have been 4th best out of the guys on the QB roster this last year. And so when people sit back and they say, oh, well, he was looking for that instant gratification, was mad that he, didn't stand a chance against Cam, which not many quarterbacks would stand a chance against Cam.
Some places are ranking him as the number 1 quarterback in the country for next year.
He's a stud. He's got all the intangibles. He's got everything you need. Like any system you fit him in, he can be that type of quarterback.
Right.
You want him slinging around all over the field, and he'll do it. You want him to manage the game and then hit the big plays in the crucial moments. Mm-hmm. And he'll do that, You want him to run, and you want him to run. look at the Rose Bowl. Look at the USC game and all that stuff.
Yes.
Look at what he did to Noah Sewell. Sorry, Gabe, but but you don't really
he
watch
outran Tavion
like
Thibodeau in that Oregon game around too, so.
But no, Nate Johnson is one of those unique wild cards where he wasn't as highly rated as I would have wanted him to be, right? Especially with being a Elite 11 finalist.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like it was justified where they had him, but Rivals wasn't the only place that didn't have him that high. And so there's obviously something there. I mean, one of the things is that they need more film on him as a quarterback, right? and doing what he's doing, because he made tremendous strides in this last year. Before this last year, everybody was looking at him like, okay, he's a stud, but he's an athlete. Can he stick a quarterback? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at things sometimes, and knowing Utah's track record, and you mentioned somebody like Brian Blecken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he came in as a quarterback. What happened? Nate Johnson's going to get every shot as a quarterback, and he could turn into Utah's next stud quarterback, right? But this kid is such an elite and talented athlete that he's going to be something special to watch. Obviously not this year, unless the coaches get some wild idea and like, oh, we have an athlete, let's put him in the best position possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
as long as Nate is, up for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the other key thing. KO kind of is going to be a kid that's going to be a stud. He'll be one of the next big time guys on the defensive line, but at the same time too, he's got to gain weight, and at the same time too, if you go on the Junior Tafuna diet, he could be up to he could be up to weight pretty fast, and be able to make an impact next year. But defensive end it's becoming a pretty stacked position, even with losing Xavier Carlton, right?
Here's a little quick side question for you. A couple years ago, we signed a kid named Tyler Weegis, who has a great motor. He's 6'6", got some good length, and he's now up to 230. I think he was like 210 coming out of high school. You think he's going to stick around and gain enough weight to where he can start playing, or?
This spring's crucial for him.
That's what I was thinking.
Because one of the things too, and it's not even necessarily like a secret because it's on his Twitter page, but Connor O'Toole has moved to defensive end.
Really?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, it was his choice. He actually approached the coaches on it, but he was always fighting to keep his weight down, and that actually sucks for the offense because they were really high on him at wide receiver.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, defensive end.
He's a big wide receiver that looked like he had some decent speed and.
Right. Right. So defensive end's pretty stacked, but KO kind of is that type of talent that. Very, very similar to Mika Tafua. So, again, if he can gain the weight, there's another great one for you guys to watch right there. I mean, I know, and I'm just spitballing on some of these things here. I know that there's some good guys that I'm forgetting. You look at somebody like Carson Tabarachi, and, who knows if something's going to happen with him this year. And he goes forgotten because... he's kind of, you almost look at it like he's positionless right now, but he's an insane athlete.
He was actually recruited as an athlete.
Yeah.
And I think it's like the offense and the defense both want him equally.
Yeah.
So we're not sure if he's going to be a linebacker or like a Brant Keithy kind of role.
100%. Yeah. And like the Keithy role is what a lot of people envision him as. But if you go and you look back at his high school tape for Rock City, he's a running back, and oh my, he's people can't stop him. But
he's 230 pounds.
But that's the other. That's 6'2", 230. But that's the other
and he's
problem.
Fast.
That's the other problem, okay? Is he is a high 3-star athlete. This should be a 4-star. That's not getting the credit that he deserves, regardless of the offers that he has, and it's because of the competition that he went up against. So it's kind of similar to like the Ellis and Teo Johnson kind of stuff.
Yep.
But he is still playing a little bit better competition, and he's dominating that way, and he's being seen. So he's a high 3-star when legitimately the kid could honestly probably be a Rivals top 250 kid. 4-star, and pick your position with him. I would like to see him in the Brant Keithy
two-way
role.
player.
I'd like to see him in the Brant Keithy role. I do wonder if they start him off at defense initially. I know that was kind of the initial thought. Who knows how long that lasts, but I think had they not gotten somebody like Logan Kendall, the Idaho transfer,
right?
Because I mean the kid can play tight end, he can play fullback. They're even talking about playing him a little bit on the defensive line, which I'll believe it when I see it, and I'm sure it's just specialty situations.
Right.
And also
Logan Kendall is a fullback / tight end kind of guy who can actually move fairly decent.
6'3", over 270.
275, something like that.
And
so good luck trying to tackle that load.
And it was funny because I asked the guys, I was like, okay, so Joe Ludwig role? They're like, no, a lot more than that. They're like, and he'll run the ball. And that's scary. that's pretty scary. So, but yeah, so had they not gotten somebody like him, all of a sudden, I'd be looking at Tabo as one of the absolute top recruits in the entire group, and thinking that he's going to slot into that, and get his opportunities that way.
So as long as we're talking about tight ends, I want to talk about one of the guys who, at least according to, his height and weight, mostly height, looks to be the kind of tight end that I think could just really dominate in terms of the receiving part. And he's a transfer from Syracuse. He's got 4 years of eligibility, probably 5 with a red shirt. I don't know, but he's got a lot of time that he could develop, put on a little weight to be a little bit more dominant strength-wise. But Landon seems to be the kind of kid that, if he's got good hands, which I've heard he does, he could be incredibly hard to defend.
Yeah. So Landon Morris, I can't remember his exact weight. I want to say he's around the 230s right now. So he's put on good weight in this last year. But the thing that's going to be interesting to find with him, Utah didn't recruit him out of high school. Okay. They didn't know about him. And then, it ended up coming across him within the whole transfer process and everything. When he was at Syracuse, the reason he left Syracuse so early in fall camp is because he didn't like the role that they had for him, and he felt like he was lied to. I didn't really dig a ton with him on that stuff, and everybody's going to have each side of the story, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what he shows when he comes in. If he comes in and he displays the stuff that, Fred Whittingham looks for with his tight ends, or if it's going to be something where, maybe we need to readjust our thinking, right? And so again, like, he's coming in as a tight end. He could be an insanely talented, receiving option. But again, you just don't know what he was showing in his time at Syracuse. And Utah will find that out. And at the same time, too, Utah's got one of the best tight end coaches in the country. And, so we'll see how he can develop those skills as well. But the nice thing for Landon is he's got some really good guys to learn from, because, you lose Fotheringham. He's one of the best blocking tight ends in the country. He's one of the best safety blankets as a tight end in the country, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to go on to a long NFL career. I honestly think he could potentially have a longer NFL career than Keithy and Kincaid. Mm-hmm. And it's because of his blocking. He is your prototypical NFL tight end, right? But yeah, so Landon's going to have Keithy and Kincaid to be able to learn from. On top of that, too.
A couple pretty good guys.
Yeah. On top of that, too, Thomas Yasmin is... He's a talent that people can't forget about, and the only reason why he hasn't really seen the field much is just because the talent that's in front of him.
And Yasmin's 6'5", 260. He was bigger than the other
huge.
three.
He's huge. So here's something that, just throwing it out for you on this, okay? And this is nothing that I've specifically heard. This is stuff that people around the program and I have talked about. Like, wouldn't this be nice? Wouldn't this be intriguing if, so on and so forth, right? You look at somebody like Cooper Kupp, his size, his speed, what he does in the game, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think that if Brant Keithy can shave down a little bit of weight and you put him more in a specialized role that way, that's more his NFL future, right?
Right.
And then you got another guy that you can slot in to the more so the receiving core. And let's face it, he was more of a receiver last year anyways, right?
Yeah.
So figure
although he did have a great block in the Oregon game where he blocked the guy out of the end. So.
He really did. But yeah, if you could take a look and do something like that, if you feel comfortable and confident enough in somebody like Yasmin, and then the other guys with the depth and everything, to, take care of the depth and improve the depth at wide receiver, it's an intriguing thing to think about, right? But Keithy is somebody that would have to be on board with something like that. And again, I'm not saying this is something that I've heard from anybody associated with the staff that that's a plan or thought process, anything like that. It's just one of those intriguing things that me and people close to the program have just like bannered around, saying like, wow, look at what Cup's doing right now. He's comparable.
Cup's amazing.
Keithy's comparable to Cup. Wouldn't that be something, right?
Yes.
Because, again, whatever Utah chooses to use Keithy as next year, his role in the NFL, when he makes it to the NFL, is going to have to evolve more into somebody like a Cooper Kupp style. And I'm not saying he can be Cooper Kupp, but at the same time too, Cooper Kupp wasn't.
Cooper Kupp made himself.
Yeah, he made himself. I mean, he did
was
well
like
in
not
a lower
recruited
level
by
college
anyone.
division.
Yes.
But still, it's like if you look at everything and like scouting reports on both of those guys, with both of them coming out of college at the different times, you're probably going to look at that thing with Keithy being held in a better light, right? And so again, I'm not saying Keithy can be Cup. I'm just saying like that's more the mold that Keithy would probably end up being when he's in the pros. So
And you have to, when we talk about stuff like that, my mind goes to how much speed does he pick up if he loses 15, 20 pounds? Because I think he's about 230. And
get him to drop 10. Just get him to drop 10. That's.
He's got some great moves because he was a running back in high school, and I think he's proven, some pretty good moves on the field for Utah. So
yeah. And it's funny because like I said, nobody's saying, oh well, we're gonna try this, right? This is just me like seeing different things in the 10+ years that I've covered the team too, right? But it also kind of tells you just my thoughts on the overall receiving core that's coming back next year, because there's some good guys in that group, but there are no definitive difference makers. Brant is a difference maker. Can you slot him in and make him more of a full-time receiver like that? And then that's a very intriguing thing to think about, because let's be blatantly honest. What is the one thing that is holding back this University of Utah team?
the passing game, the throw game is winning the likes to call it.
Yeah, but don't
the
lump
receiving core mostly.
I was gonna say don't lump Cam on that, because
right. No, Cam. I think Cam can do about anything he needs to do. It's just he does need, a pass, a completed pass is a two-part thing. You got to have the quarterback that can make it, but you have to have the receiver that can also make the catch. And hopefully a play afterwards, but
yeah, it's a problem when it's the tight ends that are the ones being relied on to take the top off of defense.
Right.
Which is exactly what was going on this year.
And that's the thing. We need players. We've got possession receivers all over the field, including the tight ends. We need a good receiver that can take the top off the defense so that we can stretch the defense, which is going to only benefit our running game. And so for those who love the running game first, I'm looking at you, Coach Witt. Love you, but come on. You need somebody that's going to stretch the D. And even if you don't stretch the D all the time, like you look at a player like Smith and Jigba, and he wasn't always behind the defense.
Dude, I'm sorry. He was fun to watch. He was fun to watch.
That kid was amazing, but
oh man. And Makai is such a good sport about it. And at the same time too, Makai is a good sport with the fact that he got blasted on that social media thing for fun, right? And they made the t-shirts out of it. Quite honestly, if you go and you look back at the tape, guess who else is getting burned, and probably more than him?
Well, exactly.
Malone.
Exactly. Malone was the one that got burnt most of the time.
Yeah.
In fact, the times that Makai was guarding him, he was actually had good coverage.
So
most of the time.
and I've mentioned this. I mentioned this on my site. I've mentioned this on Twitter. Mekhi is never the type that's going to make excuses. Mekhi had hurt his shoulder early in the season. Okay, he hurt it in the BYU game. Got worse in the Washington State game. That's when he had those 3 fumbles, right? Because Mekhi's not somebody that's just going to do something like that. It didn't look good for him for a while, and he was able to fight through it, which shows his toughness, right? And then by the time it gets to the Rose Bowl and everything, and they approach him on playing that position, he was all for it.
I heard he actually said, kind of made the suggestion.
They
approached
him on it because initially he wasn't wild about it, and because they had approached him a little bit before that. So and then they approached him again saying like, look, this is how we feel. We believe that you're this good. We believe that we stand the best chance with you doing this. And so he's like, hey, it's the Rose Bowl. I get to start. I'm doing this. He would have had a much, much better game, but that awesome touchdown catch, right?
Yes.
Like you look at there's 3 moments in that game that will be etched in Ute fans' memories for years. There's the Cam Rising touchdown run where he's looking back at everybody and with that big smile on his face, right? You got Covey running ahead of everybody, right when he bursts ahead of everybody, and that gives me flashbacks to shout out to my boy Cal Beck.
Yeah.
In the Freedom Bowl. The
other was on the 5-yard line.
Oh
against
my
Arizona.
gosh, yeah. And by the way, I was in the upper deck on that game. I thought it felt like there was an earthquake because the upper deck being like earthquake proof and it was going like a wave. Oh, it was bad. My papu, so papu's grandpa in Greek. So my papu, he was at the game and he was on crutches. And so it's like, oh gosh, but yeah, so good old Cal Beck. But yeah, and then the third one being Mekhi's catch. Well, when he caught that ball, he landed on his shoulder.
Yep.
It swelled up. He played the rest of the game with it, but like if you go back and if everybody's going to be watching that game constantly, even though Utah lost, it was.
I've watched it 3 times already.
It was a hell of a game, right? But if you go back and you watch that game and you watch every play that he's involved in, watch him and how he's trying to reach for the guys. You can kind of tell with his shoulder. The additional thing too is he couldn't hit. He couldn't be physical like everybody knows he wants to be. Just as a football player in general, he couldn't. He couldn't wrap the guys up. He was struggling, but he wasn't going to make an excuse. And he knew, and he knew everything that was at stake in this game. Mm-hmm. He knew that he had the whole off season to, get right whatever was wrong with his shoulder, which he's going to be fine. But, so yeah, I mean, when people want to look back at that, the more and more years that pass and everything, be thankful for somebody like Mekhi Bernard because he wasn't able to, after that touchdown catch, he wasn't able to show everybody just how good and how capable he would have been at the cornerback position because of re-aggravating that injury. So
it's not necessarily a bad thing just because I want him on offense because I love the kid on offense, but I want him wherever he's going to do the best and wherever he wants to be. But, he's I paid attention to him when I rewatched the Rose Bowl, and it was Malone Mataele who was getting burned most of the time.
Here's the thing too. Like I don't.
Not that I'm going to throw him under the bus.
I'm not going to slam Malone because those wide receivers, dude. The top wide receiver in the country this year that actually blew his knee out in the national championship game for Alabama.
Right.
He was their backup the year before. He had just under 200 yards receiving in 2020. And then this kid goes to Alabama. I think he won the Blitnikoff Award, if I remember correctly. Top receiver in the country. Goes for, I want to say, over 1,500 yards. Mm-hmm. Kid's a stud. And this kid wasn't, he was a backup at Oklahoma State. At Ohio State, I'm sorry.
And Ohio State's 2 receivers that skipped the game they are going to be first-round draft choices. So they bring in, I think he was a 5-star, Marvin Harrison. He comes in, and he's 6'3", 215, 220, something like that. Fast, so he's not just big, he's also fast, and he has 3 touchdowns and a great game against us because we're not used to going against guys.
The
like that.
only way Utah ends up winning that game, and the only way most teams beat Ohio State last year is
Lots of pressure on the quarterback, and we didn't get it.
that. And you know what? Morgan was trying more things than anybody realizes, but it just wasn't working. And then you look back and Mika Tafua having the sports hernia that he was playing through, and so that justifies and says a lot, right? But the only way a team, I promise everybody that if Kyle's looking back at that game, he's sitting there saying, I should have just let Cam keep winging it. I should have just let Cam keep winging it, because you go back and you watch that game, that momentum shift hit when Keithy got a little dinged up, because he was a central focus of that game plan, right? When he got dinged up, I think it just kind of like pulled everything back a little bit and said, okay, well, we've got to go with more what got us here, as opposed to trying to just go at him with the passing game, because I seriously I look back at that, had they just let Cam throw the ball a little bit more, and no offense to the running game, because Utah's got one of the best running games in the entire country. And you have to throw the ball, and it's like it doesn't matter how good anybody's defense against an offense like Ohio State, you have to keep up with them and hope you are the last one that scores, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception that because Ohio State's linebackers aren't all that great, that their run defense isn't that great. But they actually gave up 2 yards less rushing per game than Utah did. They gave up like 118.9 yards a game or something like that. And the fact of the matter is they have big athletic guys along the front who were stuffing our run game a lot of times. We would get a few here and there, but hey, here's another news flash. A good passing game loosens that up and opens up the running game. And so I couldn't agree with you more. I think we needed more passing, but between Keithy being a little bit dinged up from that, I can't remember the play, but he was not 100%.
He made a good move. I want to say he busted away from somebody and then got tackled near the sideline, or when he busted away from him. I can't remember. It might have been that when he busted away from him, he did something to it and then got tackled.
And he was ticked because he slammed his helmet.
And so, and again, it all goes back to, and anybody that wants to give me grief on saying that the one position that Utah can improve and improve greatly is the wide receivers. If Keithy does not get hurt, you can still do what you were trying to do in that game. But there weren't really any other receiving options. I mean, you got Kincaid, but more tight end, obviously, right? And like we said, Keithy was a hybrid. He was playing that wide receiver role pretty much, especially that game.
Yeah, we definitely need more speed and better hands, more physicality from the wide receivers.
If Utah would have 25% the depth that Ohio State would have at wide receiver, they win that game.
Or quality.
And again, that is the one position. And so again, going back to the recruiting and then taking a look at the transfer portal this summer, that is the one position you need to find one impact guy or one dependable, solid guy that is going to come in and give you exactly what you're expecting. Right? You need one guy, because literally that is the missing link from making this team. The Utes are going to be ranked anywhere from top 15 to top 10, right? That is the one missing link on making them a surefire between 5 to 10 ranked team.
and possibly a CFB.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
and I'm not, and I'm saying it that way just because, just not trying to like give those crazy sky high expectations. I'm giving the reality where it's like literally because of how Utah finished, because of what they did against Ohio State, which some fans might not like hearing this, but if you ask me, Utah's getting more respect out of that game losing it than they would have if they won it. Because you look at it and the narrative was initially, oh, well, Ohio State is having all those guys sit out, right? And all of a sudden it turned and everybody saw what Utah did. And the narrative turned to, oh, well, yeah, Ohio State did what they did, in the passing game, but Utah was missing like their top 3, top 4 cornerbacks, aside from Clark Phillips, right?
Right.
And
who had an awesome game.
He did, and so that was that the narrative flipped, where it was like, oh, Ohio, so all of a sudden it was the other way around. It's like, oh, Ohio State beat Utah because, Ohio State came back and beat Utah when Utah had it in the bag because Utah was so beat up that they had to play a running back at cornerback, and so. I mean, you take the narrative. You never want to take solace in a loss, and there's
no moral victories.
Right. There's no moral victories. Are there good losses? Sure. I mean, you look at it like the basketball stuff lately,
Yes.
because there has been improvement within that losing streak,
Yep.
So there are good losses. This one was a good loss. Would you have wanted them to win? Yeah, because people remember the winners of that stuff. But in the immediate future, they get
too.
Yeah. in the immediate future, Utah probably got more respect out of that game, with the outcome being what it was than if they would have won.
And I can't help but think how much different that game would have been if Travis Broughton had been healthy.
Give me one of Travis Broughton, Fabian Marks, or Samaya Vaughan. One.
If we had 2 for a little depth, that would have been great. But.
Just one.
Yeah.
And honestly, you're probably looking at a different game. But at the same time, too, you can't fully look at it that way because Ohio State can say the same thing too. But again, that goes back to my whole thing.
Their players are like plug and play.
Right. But again, that goes back to my whole thing, right? Where, again, initially it was, oh, well, if Utah wins this, it means nothing because Ohio State's sitting their guys out. And then all of a sudden Ohio State wins, and that narrative's flipped. And so it's a perfect way to validate that point, But yeah, I mean, the wouldas, couldas, shouldas. I mean, you look at all those things, man, and it's you just gotta try to enjoy the season and look at how
And it was very enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, I still... You remember that article I wrote where I'm like, look, everybody has to be okay with the team potentially not winning a game the rest of the year. I'm like, and when you see those guys on the street, when you see them in public, you literally just need to go up to them, tell them you love them, give them a hug, and ask them how they're doing. And it was like, literally, that was the frame of thought with so many people close to the program, like, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know this. We don't know that. As soon as Aaron's mom had that conversation with the team, it flipped. It was crazy. It was crazy, And so just the fact that they were able to do what they were able to do is, yeah. I mean, I'm never gonna be the type that just sits back and says, oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda on this, that, and blah blah blah. I mean, I know that we kind of went through some of those scenarios, but it's like, look, again, Utah is getting so much respect because even with losing that game, it is one of the most remarkable seasons in football in Utah football history.
Yep. Even though we had 4 losses.
yeah, and that's thanks, Charlie. But this might have been cold of me, but I couldn't resist it. I came across, so I had a picture pop up in my iPhone memories, and it was one of my photographers in the Weber State game with Charlie throwing a pass, and Adam Schultz is a good buddy of mine. Obviously, Adam Ward, number 12, also, right? And so I was like, I posted the picture on Twitter, and I said, when I have kids,
wore it better?
I said when I have kids, I'm gonna tell my kids that this is Adam Schultz because I'm having a rough time ever recollecting Charlie Brewer being a part of Utah football.
Right.
And it's just it's true though, because it feels like an eternity and it feels like two completely different seasons. Right. So it's like, yeah, Utah had those losses, but it doesn't really feel like that, you know? Right. And that's where it's just kind of funny with the whole rivalry banner.
It feels like we were a 1 or 2 loss team.
Right. You know, and that's kind of where it's just funny with the whole rivalry banter with Utah and BYU too. Hey, BYU beat Utah fair and square. Mm-hmm. You know, Utah was a little cocky for their own good going into that game and made some mistakes, and BYU got them, you know. But yeah, you know, I mean, just when BYU's the fans are trying to make all those comparisons and this and that, it's like, no, this was a completely different team. Like, the Cougars would not have wanted to play Utah at the end of the season, you know?
Not at all.
Yeah, and it's like literally, it's like, yeah, like you look back at this season, be so proud of that team and what they accomplished. It's like, oh wait, they lost 4 games? Wait, what?
Yeah.
It's just,
I don't even think of it as a 4-loss team.
No.
To me, it's more like a 1 or 2 loss team.
No, and I mean everybody around the country.
I mean, the loss to Oregon State was legit.
Yeah.
But, you know, Oregon State was coming off a bye, and you know, and the kicking unit, you know, left a lot to be desired in that game.
But I mean, the beauty of it is Utah's become much more of a national brand now. Everybody knows what to get with Utah. They also know not to ever underestimate and count Utah out and stuff like that. And the guys that are the national pundits and stuff like that pay enough attention to this stuff without just looking at records and everything, you know, they would be able to flat out tell you, yeah, Utah was one of the top 5, top 10 teams in the entire country this year.
Well, when you talk about national brand, I'll give you two quick points that kind of point that out. So first of all, we had a linebacker from Florida who was their leading tackler last year.
Mohamed Diabate.
Recruit us.
Yeah.
He sought us out because he would rather go to a new team, a team that did very well in the Rose Bowl, that absolutely obliterated Oregon twice, than stick around in Florida and see who his new coach was going to be. So there's that. And then the other thing is you have all sorts of outlets ranking us mostly in the top 5. I saw one yesterday that had us 3rd, right in front of Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I'll temper expectations and say they're a top 7 to top 12 team next year. And again, it goes back to what kind of difference maker can you find at wide receiver? Flat out. Like, and I hate beating that drum, beating a dead horse, whatever the heck you want to call it, right? But I mean, just the national respect that you got on all that stuff, and then with Diabate, it was interesting because, you know, when I was told Utah didn't recruit him, and you can't say he recruited Utah. He reached out to Utah. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, yeah. Well,
sounds better my way.
We're stacked at this position, but yeah, you're a difference maker. We'll take you. I mean, he was. I can't remember where he was in the Ravels 100, but I mean, he was pretty damn highly rated.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, he was rated initially as a defensive end.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the guy looked at the situation. He looked at. I mean, Colton Swan has become arguably the top linebacker coach in the country. I mean, you got the guy that just went as and name's escaping me, right? But the one from Georgia that just went over to be the Oregon head coach. But I mean, Swan is arguably the top linebacker coach in the entire country with what he's able to get out of his guys. I mean, you look at a Sewell is a Sewell, right? But you take a look at the development that Nephi did, and that was remarkable. Nobody was expecting that. You know, and then you look at somebody like Devin, and then just everybody else that has come through.
And he's proven to be a pretty good recruiter too.
He has
got a lot of quality.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because a lot of people are like, okay, so we're gonna keep taking linebackers, huh? It's like, you know what, get the good ones in, let the chips fall, we'll figure, you know, and the coaches will figure it out, you know. Right. It's just but yeah, you know, and then, you know, he also Muhammad also really looked at the situation like, oh, Utah's style of play as well as Devin's style of play, I'm very similar. Mm-hmm. This is good. This is a good match. It's like he already built himself up to the point where he'd be an eventual draft pick, right? But what can he do to elevate his stock that much more? And that's what he was really looking at with this situation, and that's where it really didn't take him long after he ended up going in the portal.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Well, Alex, I appreciate you taking the time to discuss our recruiting class for football this year, and time will definitely tell how good they are, who sticks around, who leaves. It'd be interesting to see if there's some stats on it somewhere about the how many recruits actually play their full career, whether they leave a year early to go to the NFL or whether they stick around 4 or 5 years.
Or
anymore with all the transfer
right,
portal.
yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what across all teams. What's the
do we need to
NCAA
give Joseph Silver Sweek a challenge?
Yes, I think we do. So
give Dustin Birch a challenge, right?
Yes, all of those guys.
You hear that, fellas?
So that would be interesting because there's so much movement going on anymore, and it's like a lot of times, and for certain positions you can understand it, like a quarterback, or there's only one of them on the field at a time, and Costelli, you got to have a little bit of feeling for him because he lost his senior year, so he didn't have the development of his senior year. So.
Here's the other thing though. He didn't, from what I've been told, have the it factor that you need in a quarterback. And so that's pretty telling with something like that right there, regardless of losing that senior year or not.
Right.
But yeah.
So anyway, we'll. You got spring ball coming up, and then we've got summer conditioning, and then fall camp. And then finally, after a long hiatus from football, we've got the Florida Gators.
You going to Gainesville?
On the 3rd, working out some plans. It depends a little bit on where my daughter goes to law school. So
okay.
But we're thinking about that. That's February 3rd down in Gainesville. Is the opening game, and it should be fun. That should be a win for us.
I'm actually calling Jalen Glover will score a touchdown in Gainesville. His first game.
I like it.
How about that, huh?
I can go for that. And maybe Tavion getting a couple, and maybe Cam throwing a few, 35, 38 points. Let's do 38 because, hey, it's...
38's been a nice number.
It's a nice number for us. We did that twice, too.
Oh, God.
We could have had in the 40s if Whittingham hadn't been a good sport because we know Oregon wouldn't have been. So, it's... I like 38 in Gainesville.
You know what I want to see next year, though? You know what I want to see? Hey, Urban Meyer was a good sport, too, right? Because, he'd get up... He'd be at, 66... 66 points, and then Utah'd have the ball within the 5-yard line, and the only thing that could keep them from scoring was a nil down, and he actually nailed it down a few times with the score around that range. So
right.
Urban was a good sport,
right?
Really,
He was just a little later.
Let's see a bunch of that stuff next year.
Yes.
For a college football playoff run, and there you go, right?
I'm all for
it. Unleash Cam.
I'm all for it. Let's go. By the way, there's some services that are saying that Cam could be the number 1 quarterback next year, so let's unleash the number 1 quarterback. Let's go to the CFP, and let's see who of the players in this recruiting class are going to be a big reason why we get there. So I'm Jed Wonderly with the Utah Sports Report. This is Alex Markham. If you want to get a lot of the inside scoop on all things Utah, mostly football and basketball, but there's a few gymnastics fans like me and a few others that talk about that a little bit. But if you want it all, I highly recommend going on to Rivals.com and signing up with Ute Nation. And then you can be part of the in crowd, man. That's how you do it. So, or
crazy banner on the board, right?
Yeah, or you can just rely on me and Twitter and other things like that in your regular news sources. So whatever.
I might just throw some info into him sometimes though, so that you can throw it on this stuff and just totally random and maybe it won't be true or something, right?
right.
Just to mess with you.
Alex got me again.
Just so you guys can get the point. Go to utenation.com.
That's right, to get the real stuff. We might come up with a nefarious scheme to say, is it real or is it not? I don't know. Go check out UteNation.com to find out.
There you go.
Appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe and share this with all your other Ute fans. And hey, go Utes.